Hi, welcome to the Certain episode of the Javid Podcast. Today, my guest is Loewen Cavill. Am I pronouncing it correctly, Loewen? By the way, I didn't check with you. Loewen Cavill, right?
Mhm.
She is a mechanical
Mhm.
engineer by training. She's a graduate of MIT and an entrepreneur, being the co-founder and CEO of Amira, which we'll talk more about later. Welcome, Loewen.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Loewen was a very brief introduction. You have a very extensive, profile. So we'll talk more about that, starting from your education. If it's fine with you, I'll jump right into questions.
Yeah, go right ahead.
So, you went to MIT and you majored in mechanical engineering with a focus on robotics. And MIT is very well renowned for when it comes to engineering. Was it always your passion to study engineering, or was it something you kind of like discovered while being at MIT?
It was kind of always part of the plan from an early age to do engineering. I knew I always loved numbers, hated words, later diagnosed as dyslexia. But engineering is kind of a good place for the children of numbers. I debated doing architecture when I was really young, but then ended up finding the applications of mechanical engineering were pretty widely encompassing. So ended up going there.
I see. And, you know, did attending MIT kind of shape in any way your direction you took with your career or, with your classes? What was like the kind of like the most impactful experiences, perhaps lessons or even people during your time at MIT?
Yeah, MIT was a total world opener. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, knew a lot about cattle farming, knew less about the things that you could do with mechanical engineering and computer science and everything else. MIT felt like such an epicenter of energy, of happenings, of an invention. It just like radiates this exciting energy where you just like want to run through the hallways and consume everything that it has to offer. And people came from all over the world, from totally different backgrounds, from Kenya to Pakistan to Seoul, Korea, to all these different places. And you're exposed to so many more lives, so many more problems, so many more opportunities. And MIT just has such a agency. Kids there are deeply impassioned and they are convinced that they're going to go make a change in the world. And MIT is like your yes man in that. It's not the naysayer and like, oh, you can't go do that. You're not qualified enough. They're like your number one yes man. And that's just kind of like the culture there in a way that makes you feel like you can do anything. And then kids go do far more than they expected that they could do. I was exposed to entrepreneurship there. I thought it was so crazy that people could start companies. Like that was never on the horizon of things that I had in mind for myself. But a lot of kids at MIT started doing it and you gain exposure to it. And then you realize that you don't have to be some demigod. You can go do it yourself and learn a ton on the process.
Yeah, that's very interesting. By the way, I feel like there's some issues in either my or your internet connection. So there's some, sometimes you freeze and I can hear everything. So if I have to ask you to repeat yourself again, I apologize. It's because of that. Um, After MIT, you ended up going to this company called Wing, which was a drone delivery service, and where you worked as a mechanical engineer, as a systems engineer. So what were some of the key lessons, and I guess both personal and professional, you learned during your time at Wing?
That's a really interesting question. I think Wing has a phenomenal team of great minds there. Google X and Wing is similar to MIT in the ways where there is no ceiling for belief in what you can do. They're very enabling there, and you can go start your own projects within the company and see that take off. And it's like the moonshot factory. So they encourage a big ceiling of belief. I learned a ton about reliability there. I was working primarily on making sure that our fleet was reliable. as we scaled it across the world to more and more users. And I think this is a really phenomenal opportunity for hardware engineers to have, because there are so many ways for hardware to fail. It could be electrical, software, hardware. It becomes a mess, and all the different things that can go wrong. And my job initially was to make the thing break. See if we can get it to catch on fire. See if we can get it in all these extreme scenarios, which is kind of every engineer's dream, is breaking things, especially complex things. And learned a lot through those early years on seeing how you can make things fail and seeing the edge cases of hardware systems.
That's really cool. And then after Wayne, you decided to start your own venture. You moved to entrepreneurship. I guess I always wonder, like, first of all, was it always, kind of in your plans to start a company? And two, it's always very, I wouldn't say stressful, but it's not a very easy decision to make, to leave a stable job behind and move to something, it's kind of like uncharted territory. It's very unknown. There are a lot of unknown factors.
Mm-hmm.
What motivates you to do that?
Yeah, I often make the analogy that, like, when you're a founder, you're like in an ocean where you can't see the bottom and it's dark outside and you can't see what's in front of you, and you're just swimming and you don't really know if you're swimming the right way, in the right direction. And it takes a long time to get those signals back and have those systems in place. So it's really important to, like, find ways to continually motivate yourself, being sure that you're doing the right thing in the right directions. Why did I start swimming in the ocean in the first place? Good question. It was never part of the plan. I think that I definitely liked the style of work in early stage entrepreneurship. There's a huge sense of agency, and there's no walls stopping you. There's no bureaucracy. It's just like, you go do it, go experiment, put all of your effort in and see that effort come out. So I love that aspect of entrepreneurship. And then when I came across the problem and also the opportunity in menopause, it became one of those things where I thought that that was the highest impact that I could have. And it became the only thing that I could think about. And time is our greatest resource. So spend your time on something that gives you that energy. And I think it's really, really important, if people are considering starting a company, choosing a problem that energizes them, that they can spend 10 years working on. The average time to exit is 10 years. And I think people start companies not realizing that, a company lasts twice as long as the average marriage. So the commitment should be taken very seriously, as well as, like, who you are committing to with your co-founders, who are your investors. So it should not be taken lightly. It's not a hackathon project. So would definitely recommend people be really sure before they jump onto this, what is now very trendy thing. Any other questions within that? I might have.
Yeah. You froze for a second. That's why I thought you were continuing still. I guess, as you said, it's very trendy, saying everybody wants to become an entrepreneur. And to be honest, if you do it right, do it successfully, it's the best thing ever, right? Like, there are only benefits to it. And, you usually hear so many success stories, but it's kind of like a, survivorship bias, right? Like, the ones that survive, they tell all this, cool stories, but there are also a bunch of startups that fail. What were some harsh truths or, like, myths or unexpected rewards of being a young entrepreneur and, like, a founder, especially at such a young age?
Yeah. A harsh truth that I came across is there's no kind of shortcut around hard work. I was like, oh, we can do this, while maintaining some sort of work-life balance, and staying a really good friend to people and always staying really healthy. And there's only so many hours in the day. And to be a founder of an early stage startup, you have to have awareness into so many different parts of the business and have to be really in the trenches, kind of setting the tone, setting the example, day in, day in and out. So that was kind of like a harsh truth, is there's no shortcut around hard work. And I think one of the things that really helped is like surrounding myself in an environment and a peer group of people that were kind of similarly minded in the work ethic that they held themselves to. And everyone finds systems that really work for them. And I think that there's a lot of creativity in the systems that people come across. Like some people, they have a strict sauna routine or strict bedtime, or maybe they're really strict about their workout schedule or their eating routine. And everyone goes about it in their own way. But I think finding that system that really works for you and being around other really disciplined people helps a lot in the process.
That's that's fascinating. And how does it, like leading at such a young age, so many different people, and balancing your own kind of like a life. Actually, tell me, like, you said having work-life balance is really hard. Um, how does your typical week look like? Is it 100 hours? Is it 80 hours? Or like, and also overseeing so many different aspects of such a company, which means you're involved in every aspect from finances to product to engineering to etc. Right? How do you keep up with all the knowledge and information and navigating all that and just like moving the company forward?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And one thing that I have kind of come to conclude is it's kind of always there with you. Like I
Mm.
cannot tell you how many of my dreams are about the company. Whether it's like
Wow.
go to market, manufacturing nightmares, like whatever it might be, like my subconscious is still very much rooted in it. Like it feels very tied to um yeah, the subconscious, the ego, the mind, all of it. Um so that's something that's there. You do have to find ways to give yourself the different brain state where you are like walking and you're able to like relieve the pressure you put on the brain, and then that way you can have more generative ideas or make different connections that you would otherwise have. So for me, walking, running, meditating, um those are things that really help me kind of have those like working while not working setups in place. So I think that's really important to have. And then,
That's
yeah, like weekends are a thing, nighttime working is a thing. Um, you, your job as a CEO is
yeah.
many things. It's a very confusing job description, but one of the biggest things is you are leading a team and you do not want anyone to be blocked by your approvals or your feedback. So that is dependent on kind of like how many people you have at the company, as well as like what's going on at a given time. But being really quick to respond at like 11 p.m. on a Thursday is important to me. Being quick to respond at 11 a.m. on a Sunday is really important to me. So making sure that I am enabling everyone at the company to reach their full potential and not be unnecessarily blocked by different things. And I think you can do that in different ways by giving people large amounts of autonomy, but
Mm.
also when it is time to have your feedback or perspective on a different part of the org, you're
Mm.
there quickly able to communicate with them.
And you're an engineer by training and by education.
Yeah,
You're first and foremost kind of like the person behind the idea and like the technology. But as a CEO, you were doing everything, right? You were doing finances. You're probably involved in marketing. You're involved in meeting the investors and etc. How do you how do you learn and how do you master so much of different kinds of information and input on the job,
totally. This is a great question. This is one thing that I like definitely underappreciated the skill that is required to
Mm.
go through a day of 12 meetings, also
Mm.
deep work, and the contrast in these different meetings, whether it's a fundraising pitch or firing someone or hiring someone or manufacturing conversations, and all of that within the same day. Um, can be dizzying. It's like you're in a pinball machine of these different contexts, and how you show up in each of those different environments is slightly different. When you are having a performance review with a conversation, like with a employee, it's far less like gregarious and confident and outgoing. It's more listening. So this has been a skill. This is like a muscle, and being able to switch your state of being for
Mm.
whatever is at hand, and then being present when you are in that room and showing up fully there versus like your mind being still in the last meeting. And sometimes there's like hefty meetings, hefty parts of the journey. It's like a roller coaster, and you have 3 of the highest highs and 3 of the lowest lows all the same day, and you look down and it's only 1 p.m. So being able to ride that roller coaster of emotional intensity is a skill that has to be mastered and practiced every day. And there's not a lot of shortcuts. I think you can do a lot of it by like trial, just like jumping in and treating it like a training, treating it like a phenomenal opportunity to grow and get better. I think a lot of people, when they're in those contexts, they can get overwhelmed. And then that invites this stress that kind of eats away at you. And you can't let that come into play. You can't have that stress or that fear eat away from your energy because there's so much to do at hand. So finding a way to take that overwhelming plate of things to do, the overwhelming plate of ways that you need to show up and be grateful for it, take it one step at a time and be fully present in it and not lose yourself in the thought cycles of overwhelm.
That's a very nice perspective. Whenever I talk to my dad, I'm like, oh, I want to become an entrepreneur. He's like, Javid, you're 24. Nobody's going to take you seriously, So I want to ask a similar question. You're very young. I don't know exactly your age, but you're young and you're a woman, which, usually I feel like people, feel certain stigma, right? Like, being a young and also, being a woman. Do you ever feel that? Or do you feel like, especially as you grow your company, you get people of different ages and experiences of different backgrounds, being a young entrepreneur, do you feel like it's challenging to lead all sorts of people, or?
It's a good question. I put myself in environments where I was managing quite early on through different jobs that I would have, or even in college, like clubs, you start managing people older than you, like very small ways that you can start stimulating those environments and planning at Google X, when I was at Wing, started managing a team there and got to manage people far more senior than me in age as well as experience. So that was a way to trial it. I would say the concept of being younger than others has been less a pushback than being a woman. I think you do get a lot of pushback being the only women in a room. And one thing that has really helped me is giving myself a little bit of a microcosm of a reality distortion field. I live in a house of female founders, female VCs, where there is no notion that, oh, you're too young for this, or you're women, so you shouldn't be in those positions. So you need to give yourself like the undying conviction, the undying confidence and certainty that you belong to be in that position. You deserve to be there. So surrounding yourself with people that give you even more confidence in that because they're doing it themselves and they don't doubt that. So I think that's a really helpful way to do it.
That's fair. We talked a lot around your company, but we didn't talk about your company. So tell me about Amira, could you elaborate the mission and the vision you had with it?
Yeah. So our mission is unlocking human potential, specifically women's potential when it is most overlooked. We have so much engineering effort across the world on delivering things faster to your door or some other like gimmicky thing, but to truly enable women to show up when it is most needed. If you think about a woman in her mid 40s, late 40s, early 50s, she is rising through the ranks of senior leadership at her company. She has high schoolers or college kids, which is like the worst time to be a parent. And she also has aging parents. So she has so much more on her plate than we can imagine at this point in time. Like I talk about overwhelm, they have it to another level. So we're focused on enabling them to show up in the day-to-day with their fullest energy, their fullest health, their fullest potential. That's what we're focused on. And we're doing that initially focused on their nighttime hot flashes. This is something that affects about 80% of women for 7.5 years, where these women are waking up 4 to like 12 times a night due to these pesky hot flashes. So it's these thermal bursts where they feel overwhelming sensation of heat. And then they have to wake up, go cool themselves down. We had one tester that would go sit in a snowbank in Alaska to try and cool herself down during her nighttime hot flashes. So we're making that stage of life easier by predicting the hot flash and preemptively counteracting it through automated cooling mattress pad.
That's that's very interesting. How did you like come up with that idea? Was it from identifying a problem? Obviously, people know about the menopause, and women know better the side effect, the symptoms that come with it. But how did you kind of come up with the identifying like a problem to conceptualizing the idea of building a product to tackle that problem, and then also like finding co-founders, building a team, and finally launching the product? Like how was that process like?
Yeah. So menopause was not the thing that I woke up when I was 5 years old and I'm like, that's the thing I'm gonna do. It was never necessarily part of the plan, but I think a lot of the best things in life are never part of the plan. Menopause is a really interesting topic because it's everywhere, but it's also nowhere at the same time because it's all around you, but no one's talking about it. So it's like elephant in the room that no one's talking about. And for many of us that aren't experiencing it, we have no idea what's going on. I was very much one of those people that had no idea the true nature of menopause, and stumbled across it when my aunt was hospitalized from it. She was waking up like 5 times a night from her hot flashes for 4 years straight. This sleep deprivation got so bad that her health was going all out of whack. It was like changing who she felt she was. She no longer was her cheery self anymore, affecting how she showed up at work. Went to every doctor, every naturopath, tried well over like $10,000 in products. And one of the things she tried sent to the hospital was side effects. It was at that moment that I'm like, wait a minute, what is this thing of menopause? Then started talking to her friends' friends, and kickstarted this expansive search around menopause, speaking to about 350 women experiencing menopause, and was blown away by the magnitude of suffering and problems here that is not being addressed through a really innovative technical engineering approach. So I started rallying around some of the best and brightest that I knew, found my co-founders at MIT. We'd previously worked on a bunch of projects together. I'd seen them through many all-nighters, and started rallying a gang around this really important unaddressed problem and approaching it in a very novel way through technical rigor.
That's really cool. And when you approach the fundraising, right? Like fundraising is a crucial aspect of startups and startups journey. And I'm wondering, how did you approach that challenge, and what do you think were the key factors in securing funding, as a young entrepreneur? And, I'm not sure if you work with venture capitals. I'm guessing you work with venture capital. So, if you did, like, what were the main hurdles that you really, you faced during that fundraising process?
Yeah, that is one thing that I very much underappreciated before starting in the game of entrepreneurship is the psychological toll that fundraising takes. Being rejected 70 times from VCs, like you hear that and you're like, oh, wow, that sounds tough. But then you go experience it and it really messes with your sense of identity, challenges your ego pretty dramatically. And what you have to do is, every rejection, every punch that you get in that arena that you're in, you have to go stand up, do it again with even more confidence, enthusiasm, and grit. So it was extremely challenging to go fundraise. Venture capitalists like following trends. They also like known entities. And there's a couple no entrance areas. Hardware is a big, like, no, we do not do hardware sign. Consumer is a big, we do not do consumer sign. And then menopause is we don't know what that is. We don't have experience in that problem. Market's probably too small because I don't know of it. So it was definitely a trying time for myself and the team. Well, yeah, we ended up raising $3 million. and got some incredible venture capital partners on board, which has been like really, really helpful for us.
Did you see any difference when you were, into pitching to female investors compared to male investors, considering your product, your company is very much like female, like health oriented,
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think there's so much exploration around what it is to be feminine, female, men, and then female to female interactions. It's a whole own thing. One thing that we did learn is women investors have not been enabled like male investors when it comes to the size of capital they can deploy. A lot of the women's health focused funds, everyone like points to, oh, you should go to the women's health focused funds. They have like 5 million in total assets under management. So there's not a lot of movement that can be created there. So I think that's a really big difficulty is there's not that many investors, and a lot of the female there's not that many women investors, and a lot of the female investors that there are have not been given the same amount of capital that male counterparts have. We had to do a lot more education when it came to male investors around what is menopause, but we still had to do a lot of education around what is menopause for women investors. Ask majority of women experiencing menopause, and they feel like drastically underprepared for what it was to come. So a lot of education was required on both fronts.
I see. In your experience, like looking back at the entire process, what makes a good pitch deck?
I think this maybe is a hot take. I think that I guess there's two camps. There's two camps of people. There's camp one where people, spend a week on their pitch deck or less than a week, a few hours a day. And they're just like, we're going to put out the first thing that we get and it's just going to be what it is. And then there's the second camp of people where they're more the perfectionist side and they mull over for months this pitch deck and then take the feedback from everyone that they speak to, and they speak to a lot of people on it, and striking that perfect balance is definitely difficult. I think that the best pitches are tailored to the individual and what they care about. I think too many people adhere to their script and like force it down and almost like a forced sales function. I think it should be much more of a conversation because everyone has their own hindrances, the things that they're scared of on, hardware scares me or consumer scares me. And you got to like identify those. And then different things make people excited, and leaning into those and combating some of their hesitancies up front is really important. So one piece of advice for the perfect pitch deck is loose adherence to the pitch deck and truly tailoring it to the conversation at hand, the individual at hand. And then not taking everyone's advice, not taking too little advice is also some of the advice that I would give around the pitch deck. Definitely like start with the problem, show the market potential. And venture investors, the number one job that they have is returning capital to their LPs. So if they can answer that, that is a guaranteed important part of that.
Frozen. It's been a few years now that you're involved with your startup. So I guess I want to get some reflection, about the entire process. If you could start over, if you could go back in time, and I know it's a very loaded question, just, approach it however you want. What would you do differently?
That is a really tough question. What would I do differently? I think that people are such an important part of it. I think diving into any conflict earlier, any disagreements earlier is something that I would not innately jump for in the early days, but getting to that misalignment so that you can much more quickly progress the company forward is really, really important. That's definitely one that I would do. Also go to China earlier. And China has done such a phenomenal job of manufacturing, frankly. Like we don't give them enough credit for like the talent of the engineers there. In the earliest day of days, I would have hopped on a flight, with my like V1 prototype, or maybe I just had the idea, I would go there and work with some of the manufacturers there for like speeding up the design for manufacturing process, and building trust with manufacturing relationships there, because they won't take you seriously if you don't have like 100,000 order. But being on the doorstep helps.
I see. Looking at the future of Amira, what's next, right? Like, are there any plans for? I'm not sure if it's the market only in the US right now, is it, or?
Yeah, we're starting US.
US. Are there like any plans for geographical expansion or addressing other menopausal symptoms? And additionally, are there any? I'm not at that age, so I don't know what symptoms males experience. But additionally, are there any male-specific age-related symptoms that Amira might explore solutions for in the future?
Yeah, so there is a tree of possibilities for us to go down. Geographic expansion is the first one that we'll do, especially in like UK market. They're so forward on menopause. Like the US is very, very behind compared to them. Europe is another easy pathway. And then there's like 3 different routes ahead. There's expand into other menopause offerings. There is take the exact same product and copy and paste it for different demographics. Because men experience hot flashes too. Women experiencing pregnancy experience it. The hot flash market is much more than just menopause. And then additionally, the same product would work outside of just hot flashes alone. People get really warm at random spots in the night and they don't necessarily know why. It's not necessarily the same biological process of a hot flash, but it would work the same with our offering. So there's an expansion there beyond just menopausal hot flashes. And then thirdly, there is expanding our sensors capabilities, which is looking at things inside of the sweat. What additional insights, what additional information and action can we take from segmenting this really plentiful holy grail and sensory information that sweat is? So those are 3 paths. We will go down all of them. When we will tackle each is a different question. I think that one thing that has been a very important part of this journey is knowing when it is time to focus on which different pieces of the puzzle. And what we're hyper focused on right now is making sure that our initial batch of users have a phenomenal time with it and rave about it to all of their friends. So that is what we're hyper focused on right now. And I'm trying to constrain my excitement about all the future cool things that we can do.
Well, I'm sure whatever you do, you'll be very successful, and wishing you a bunch of luck with every future kind of step you take with your company. We are at the end of our episode. It was very informative, especially talking to young founders like you. I feel like there's so much like I can personally learn from people like you, because you're doing something that most young people like me want to do, and it's really fascinating to talk to people like you. So I guess, do you have any final words of advice or insights for our viewers, especially those who aspire to start a company, perhaps young women, who want to start their own company?
Yeah. The ceiling of belief is, I think, the biggest limiter. Believing in oneself is really the biggest first step, and the continual step. It's like continually believing in yourself, believing in the mission. And then also setting up these systems around you that you're always increasing in self-awareness. Because blind belief without awareness of where you are is detrimental, frankly. So making sure that you have time for reflection, have time for listening to advice from others, have time for like reading the tea leaves as they are, and acknowledging the system as it is. All that's really important. But the constant belief is also. So it's balancing the reality with self-awareness and constantly raising the ceiling of what you believe that you can do.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. This is the end of our episode. Thank you. It was a very informative, great talk. And again, I wish you a bunch of luck and success with your company and every future step you take.
Appreciate it. Great chatting with you.